Hey there, I'm Erick, and I want to personally welcome you to this SQL course. So, if you've ever felt stuck in tutorials or unsure how to apply SQL in the real world, then you are in the right place. So, in this course, we are not just going to learn SQL commands. We're going to learn the language of data. We're going to build portfolio ready projects, and then we're going to solve case studies with business logic using SQL. And then we're going to tackle SQL interview challenges that will help you prepare for the interview. So what I normally teach is that I use practical, job focused, and designed to get you the results. So without wasting time, let's jump in and learn how SQL really works. So we're going to start with the what a database is and why it empowers everything around you. So let's start with the database. So database database is a collection of data that can be easily managed. So just think a database like a big digital filing cabinet where data is stored in tables like Excel or spreadsheets, but more powerful and secure. So, for example, a supermarket might use a database to store the customer informations, details about products, the order transactions, the supplier details. So, these each of these can be stored in a separate table, and this table can be linked together. So these information like customer products and orders, supplier details, these can be stored in a separate table and then linked to each other. So database is the organized collection of data that can be easily accessible and managed. So it's more of like a digital filing cabinet where data is stored in tables like spreadsheets, but more powerful and secure. So example is like a supermarket storing its data for customer information, products, order transaction, and details. So this kind of information, they can be stored in a separate table each, and then they can be linked together. Can be linked together using what we call the concept of keys, primary key and foreign key. Yeah, so this database, we normally use software for you to access this database, or for you to accept to access, manipulate, or use this data that is stored in a database. We normally need a software that will allow us to interact with the database. So this software is what we call database management system, the software that allow user to interact with database so that they can create, read, update, and delete data. So example of this software include MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, Oracle, and SQLite. So this software, they will help us now writing the SQL. Now they will help us interact with the database because we cannot manually interact with the database. So we need a software that will help us interact with this database that they contain our data. So this software is what we call database management system. And these are some of the example of database management system, the software that will allow us to interact with the database so that we can access and manipulate our data. So this is just a general framework of how the database works. So this is a database, and then between database and the user, there's a software. So this user, they use a software to interact with the database so that they can manipulate the data in this database. So you can see the user, they interact with this software application, and then to access and manipulate the data that is stored in a database. So this database system example, as we've seen, is the MySQL, Postgre, and SQL server. So this is where the user going to use MySQL, Postgre. So they use these softwares to access, manipulate data that is stored in database. So this database, they've been categorized into two categories. This database, there's two category of database. We have relational databases and non-relational database. So normally a relational database, it stores data in form of tables. So the data stored in relational database, they are in form of tables. So that means they contain rows and column. So the uses a relationship to link the data across the tables. So as we proceed learning this SQL, we're going to have a topic about joins, where the tables, the data in different tables, this table will be interconnected or will be joined or can be joined using what we call foreign key and primary keys. So we're going to use foreign key and primary key to join this table stored in relational database. As we said, relational database store data in tables, and then we go to use these tables to build relationship among themselves using foreign key and primary key. So example of relational database include the database stored in MySQL software, the database that is found in PostgreSQL, database that are found in SQL Server and Oracle, and then we have a non-relational database. So non-relational database, this one, they do not store their data in form of tables. So they store their data without fixed schema. So they often in formats like document, key, value, pairs, or graphs. So example of non-relational databases include MongoDB. So this specifically for document kind of based data. We have Redis. Redis is for the key value store. Cassandra is for column based kind of data, and then we have Neo for J. So this one is for storing graph based kind of data. So I think that one is clear. The database categorized into two category, relational and non-relational. And then relational, we've seen they store data in form of tables, and this table can be interconnected with one another using the foreign keys. While the other side, non-relational database, this one stores data without fixed schema, and often they often store data in formats like documents and all those kind of things. So these are some of the example of non-relational, and this is some of the example of relational databases. Yeah. So now we've understood the database, the definition of database, the types of database, and their respective example. So now let's learn SQL. So what is SQL? Why do we need SQL? Why SQL is needed in all these kind of things? So SQL is the language we need to interact with this database. So we've seen that data is stored in a database. So for us to interact with this database, we normally use SQL. So we use SQL to interact with DB and do some operations. So what is SQL? So SQL is its long form is structured query language. So it's a language used to communicate with and manage relational database. Underline the word relational. So we've seen there's two category of database, a relational and relation. So we normally use SQL to communicate and manage a relational database. So we cannot use SQL to communicate with non-relational database. So we will focus more of a relational database. So SQL allows you to create and manage database and tables. Yeah, so SQL will help you to create tables in the database. It will also help you to insert, update, delete, and retrieve data in the database. It will also help you define and control access to data. SQL also allows you to analyze data through queries. Now we've seen SQL definition and we've seen the uses of SQL. So now let's jump to SQL commands. So SQL commands are the instruction used to communicate with database. For us to communicate with this database, we must put instruction so that we can communicate with the database. So this instruction is what we call SQL commands. So they're used to perform specific tasks, function and query of data. So there's instructions that are used to perform specific tasks, function and queries of data. They perform various tasks like create table. So we can have an instruction for creating a table. We can have an instruction for inserting data to tables. We can have instructions to drop the table. We can have instruction to modify the table. We can have instruction to set permission for users and etc. So these are the different category of SQL commands. So we have data definition language. So these are example of data definition language, and we have data definition language example include create for creating table, drop for dropping a table, alter for altering a table structure, and then truncate for truncate table structure. So we also have another category, it's called data manipulation language. Example include inserting instruction for inserting, update for updating an information into a database, delete for deleting either entire records of a table or a specific row of a table, and then merge for merging data, and then you have data control language. So here we can have grant and revoke, this majorly for granting permission. And then we have commit, transaction control language. This one example includes commit, rollback, and save point. And then we have data query language. Example include select. So let's try to have a good definition of these types of commands, SQL commands. So we have DDL, so which means data definition language. So data definition language defines and modify the structure of tables and the database objects. So for example, if you want to create a table, we are going to use a create command. So we're going to command we're going to write a SQL command, which its function is create. So we're going to write create, and then we create a table. If you want, for example, if you want to alter a table, for example, you want to add a column, you want to remove a column, so you want to alter the structure of a table, you can use alter, and then if you want to delete or drop the whole table, we can use drop, and then truncate. Truncate, we can, if you want to just remove the records of the table. So that one we normally use truncate. So data definition language majorly it defines and modify the structure of table, like creating of table, altering of table, dropping of a table, and deleting the records of a table. And then you have DML, data manipulation language. So data manipulation language handles inserting. So for example, if you want to insert data into our existing table, we want to update data into our existing table and delete data into our existing table, we normally use commands that are falling under data manipulation language. So these commands include insert, this one for inserting data, update for updating data into our existing table, and then we have merge, and then we have delete and merge. And then we have data control language. So this one manages the access rights and permission. For example, you want your data to be accessed by specific people. So we normally use data control language to manage the access rights and permission. So the commands falling under data control language include grant and revoke. And then we have TCL. So this is transactional control language. So transaction control language control the legal execution of transactions. So the commands falling under this category include commit, rollback, and save point. And then we have DQL, data query language. So this one is used to retrieve data from tables. So the command falling under this category include select, and then we have, so before we practically do this work with these SQL commands, we first of all need to understand data type and constraints. So this data type and constraints, they will guide us in creating the columns of these tables. So data types, SQL data types, they define the kind of data that can be stored in each column. So for example, we can decide to, so for example, if your column you want only to have varchar data type. So varchar, so these are the example of, types of data types. We have varchar. So varchar, this one includes alphanumeric values. So that is the combination of numbers and alphabets. And then you have, so example include forest, So these are the example, and then integers. This comprises only whole number, 0 to 9, and then both positive and negative, and does not store decimal values. So for example, these are the example, and that's this one for date values examples. And then we have float deals with the decimal numbers only, and we have examples, and then we have boolean. So boolean stores true or false kind of data type. So this data type, they will help us define our column in over table. And then you have constraints. So constraints, these are rules enforced on data column in a table. So for example, if you want your column not to have null value, so you're going to put rules to ensure that your column will not contain null value. So these are the rules that you will put when you are creating a table, when creating a columns of a table. So for example, if your column you don't want not you don't want null values, you will put an instruction or rules that will enforce this column not to have that's kind of a value. So these are the constraints types. So we have not null. So this one ensure that a column cannot have null values. This one defaults. So default provides a default value for a column when none is specified. So for example, you are entering a column, you have a column for gender, and in that column, so you expect male or female. So in case you didn't specify, then there'll be a default value that will be displayed. For example, if you don't specify, you can write the default to be not specified. Yeah. And then you have unique. So this one ensures that all value in a column are different. So that means your column will not allow any sort of duplicates. And then we have primary key. So primary key, this one allows the column values in every row is unique and has no null value. So every row doesn't have, it is unique and it has no null value. So that means there's no duplicates and there's no null values in your column. So primary key ensures that. And then we have foreign key. So foreign key help to form parent-child relationship between tables, where the child table reference column value from a table. So if you want, for example, if you want to join two tables, there must be common column among the two tables. So you will specify one of the two common column. One will be primary key and the other one will be foreign key. So foreign key will act as it's more of like a primary key in the other table, in the child table. And then you have check. So check helps to control the value being inserted into a table, i.e. verifies all value in a specified condition. So this one ensures that the data entered into that specific column aligns with the or satisfy the specific column that is put in the specific condition that is put in that column. So for example, if we specify, let's say we want to enter age of let's say adult. So that means you will the age will be 18 and above. Therefore, check will allow us to ensure that the age in that particular column is greater than or equal to 18 and above. So in case we enter anything less than 18, it will pop up an error, or it will not allow such kind of data to be inserted in such kind of in that particular columns. And then we have index. So index is a field providing faster retrieval of data. Yeah, so let's practically see how we can create or work with the data definition, on how we can work with SQL commands and the SQL data type and SQL constraints.